My next guest is Senator Eric Pratt from the Minnesota State Senate. He serves as Assistant Majority Leader and he chairs the Jobs and Economic Growth, Finance, and Policy Committee. And my understanding is that his district is in the Twin Cities metro area. We've been talking a little bit of Minneapolis. We're going to widen our aperture. We're going to talk about small business in the state, but I just want to kind of make sure that we make the alignment right. Senator, it's great to be with you today. Look, as we're talking about small business recovery, there's sort of I'm wondering if there's an inflection point where, usually businesses government want to get out of the way, they want to help, but we're a little bit in the nexus of talking about what do we do, what do small businesses mostly need to succeed after a pretty traumatic 18 months. So as you go out and talk to your constituents, what do they want? What do they need?
Well, that's a great question, and thanks for having me today. I actually live in Congresswoman Craig's district. We share that. And so we talk to a lot of the same business owners. And the ones I talk to, through the pandemic and the restrictions that we had here in Minnesota, really needed financial support. We had taken their cash flow down to near zero in many cases. And so we needed to infuse them with working capital in order to keep the plywood out of their windows while their doors were shut. In fact, we did 3 rounds of grants. We did one in June. We came back again in December. And then just in this last budget cycle, we passed another $70 million in small business grants. So in total, we will have put in excess of $400 million into small business grants and support. It's really important. Many of our small business owners have their personal finances tied to their businesses. I had one restaurant owner who was worried he was going to lose his home because he had the second mortgage to keep his business open. But not only do I represent a small portion of the Twin Cities Metro, but as the Jobs Chair and as a state senator, it's my responsibility to look out for the health of the entire state, both Metro and Greater Minnesota.
Well, I really love the way you framed that because, it's clear that what hit us was on this scale, in my opinion, this is my opinion speaking, of the Great Depression. And so you had real systemic effects. Mm-hmm. The point is, when you're growing out of that, we're talking, about small businesses. We're talking about also Black and Brown owned small businesses that have often not been, in the same track as other businesses, and how to get that equation right so that the bailouts don't become permanent, but businesses get the resources and direction and support they need. Senator, you authored this bill. I'd love to hear more about the Jobs and Economic Growth Bill that the Minnesota State Senate passed. So I assume it's not law yet, but it's on the way. What is that? How is that legislation responding, to that kind of inclusive picture of what businesses and jobs and that social contract for work out there?
Actually, it has become law, and it'll start going into effect soon. It was
Congratulations.
An overall budget bill that we passed prior to July 1st. And, a couple of the highlights. We put together what we call the Main Street Revitalization Act. There's $70 million, as I mentioned, for direct grants to small businesses that range between $10,000 and $25,000. It's really meant to help businesses that were impacted directly by COVID and the COVID restrictions that we had. Moving it, again, being the third round, really trying to target those businesses that hadn't received support in the past. Then we had $80 million in, I want to say, capital projects. Again, statewide, understanding that we need to help small communities and large communities, quite honestly, rebuild some of the infrastructure. So if there's if there's issues in Minneapolis where we need to rebuild part of Lake Street, or if there's a child care center in Greater Minnesota that needs help being built, or a factory, we can provide those incentives to help build those communities, build those jobs. One of the key portions of the Jobs Committee that I tend to look at is trying to remove the barriers to employment. And childcare, as I just mentioned, is one of the biggest barriers we have. And so we put $8 million this year and another $5 million next year into expanding childcare access.
Fascinating.
Improving the access and the sustainability so that we can get more people back to work.
You know, another thing, Senator, so first of all, congratulations on your bill passing. I didn't give me anything. I would have had champagne for you or something if I'd known that. But, you know, another dimension, later this week, I'm actually going to be talking with a guy named Aman Bhutani. And Bhutani is the CEO of a company called GoDaddy. And GoDaddy is the largest internet registration company and business support company in the U.S. in that digital space. And if there's one thing that we saw in the pandemic, is that we've all finally really gone from analog to digital, and all of this space is out there. And if you look at these studies that they've helped fund with the University of Iowa, Arizona State, and UCLA, you see a massive explosion of micro businesses and people doing businesses on the side, and that, you know, lots of in the area of minority-owned businesses, whatnot, folks creating new ventures, micro ventures on the side of what they're doing. And, you know, I've been interested in whether legislators like yourself have this on their radar screen, or is this a point of orientation in business formation and what's going on that we're not seeing? Because I'm sort of asking myself, well, you know, there's some tough stories up here, but then when you look down here, there's actually a fascinating bit of innovation. And I'm wondering what we're doing by providing, you know, ways of digital support or incubators, or how to help folks have literacy on running businesses at that side. Because when we're talking about small businesses, many small businesses want to become big businesses. You know, micro business want to become big. And I'm just wondering if any of that is in the realm that you and your legislative colleagues are looking at.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we recognize that, you know, many of our small businesses aren't just competing with the guy across town. He's competing with people, with businesses in other states and quite honestly, other countries. What the digital economy has done is truly created a global economy, and our small Minnesota businesses need to be able to compete in that. One part of the jobs bill that we had was to leverage the federal money and put $70 million into expanding broadband access across the state, predominantly in rural Minnesota, where we have some real coverage holes. But, you know, even here in the metro, in my district, which is considered a suburban district, out in the townships, we have poor broadband coverage. So what does that mean? That means that I've got people that were working from home that couldn't work effectively or efficiently. I've got kids trying to go to school remotely that were having problems. And so I think broadband is the new interstate highway of the 21st century. But then we also have to look at how we compete with other states and other countries from our taxes. Minnesota is one of the highest tax states per capita in the nation. And in fact, we're ranked 9th overall in per capita state and local taxes, which becomes a real problem for our small businesses that are trying to grow to become big businesses.
Right. Well, you know, you're in the Twin City metro area, but I'm sure that what happens in Minneapolis also matters to you. And Minneapolis has been kind of a zone where just a lot of tough stuff has happened over those last 18 months. And, you know, the whole equation of economic justice, economic inclusion, racial justice, how do you rewire it? I've talked with the mayor today, you know, kind of bringing on various people to sort of, you know, help explicate that part of the equation. Is there, how do I ask this politely, is there a kind of understanding in the other parts of the state that getting that equation right across the board for small businesses so that it's inclusive is a real priority, even if you're out of the city?
Well, I think there is. We certainly understand that in order to have a healthy Minnesota economy, we have to have a healthy Minneapolis and St. Paul, and we also have to have a healthy greater Minnesota. Part of the revitalization makes funds available to help rebuild those areas that were hurt by the riots last summer. But it is a statewide program as well, recognizing that we've got needs across the state. But we also have to look at the problems of Minneapolis in that we still have small businesses that are concerned about safety. We've got people in the Twin Cities that are reluctant to go to ball games or go to restaurants because they're worried about the safety of Minneapolis. And I think the mayor's done a good job of supporting the police. He needs a city council that's going to support the police as well and make sure that law enforcement is a top priority. If we really want to get investment back into the Twin Cities and into minority-owned businesses, we have to make safety a top concern.
Well, we'll leave it there. Senator Eric Pratt, who chairs the Jobs and Economic Growth Finance and Policy Committee, and he succeeded in getting the bill he authored, the Economic Growth Jobs and Economic Growth Bill, into law. I stand corrected on that. It's great. So, Senator Pratt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.